I'm Chef Mike Moses. Welcome to my podcast. Calling it what it is, this is a podcast that looks at the way you feel about that first bite of a memorable meal. How do others remember that turning point in their lives when they picked up that fork and took that special bite? I'll look at my culinary adventures, from learning to cook, my failures, and of course my successes, and the stories of the hard lessons that I learned. I also have some special guests joining me to talk about their unique meals or journeys to cook, just to get that dish. And in this episode, I have a very special guest. This episode is all about the Halifax Donair. Welcome. I'm glad you could join me. Let's dig into this. It was 1979 when I was introduced to the Donair. After celebrating a hockey win against Dalhousie in Halifax, Nova Scotia, my teammates and I started to wander around town looking for something to eat. Well, we stumbled upon this little shop located in a little corner of a store on Spring Garden Road. In this shop were two big logs of meat rotating on a spit and a huge pile of pita bread. And on the prep table, only 3 ingredients: onions, tomatoes, and a sauce. A big roll of tin foil and 2 items on the menu: regular Donair and large Donair. Nothing else. Intrigued, I ordered a regular and walked out with this hot treat double wrapped in tin foil, ready to be eaten on the fly. Well, I found a bench at a nearby park and started to peel back the tin foil to expose a pita bread full of meat with some onions and tomatoes and that sauce. So good, so sweet, vinegar-based with just a little bit of garlic. 2 things I learned. If you've had a few drinks, the Donair is like eating heaven. And the further you get into it, the messier it gets. You need a lot of napkins. So where did this come from? What is the history of the Donair? Joining me is a self-professed food nerd, award-winning food blogger at eatthistown.ca, and author of Book of Donaire, Lindsay Wickstrom. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell me, Lindsay, what is your very first memory of a Donair?
Well, it's kind of funny. I didn't grow up eating Donairs. My mom was just not about that kind of food. My dad was kind of a seafood guy. And so my actual first experience with a Donair was I was a very, very young child, and I went into the doctor's office, and my doctor had just had a Donair for lunch. So the Donair was gone, but its smell was still there.
It lingers.
It was so overpowering that I started crying. I didn't know what a Donair was. They said, oh, he had a Donair. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was something awful. Something to do with the grease and the spice and the meat. I'm not sure. It was the vinegar and the sugar. A little while later, I saw the sauce for the first time. I was with a friend's parent, and we went to a pizza shop, and they both ordered Donairs. And I was like, nope. So I ordered a slice of pizza, and I watched them eat it, and the sauce was just oozing on top, and I was just so disgusted by it. There were some urban legends going around as well about Donair sauce at the time. It was just, I don't know, I thought it was kind of sketchy, but I had my first Donair when I was 17 years old, and I thought it was pretty okay.
Not awesome, just okay.
Well, I mean, it's not my favorite food. I have more of a intellectual interest in the Donair, but now that I've eaten so many of them, I mean, I get a hankering for one every now and then.
Same here. Every month we do a Donair. I usually make Donair meat, or we have a little pizza. Everybody has a corner pizza shop that makes Donairs, and we just order one and away you go.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Donair? What regular, large, extra meat, extra sauce?
I just go for the traditional recipe. I might just get like a regular sized Donair. I like the sauce to be on the Donair, not in a cup on the side like some people get. That's just wrong. It messes up the whole experience. I do the onions. I do the tomatoes.
And it really is an experience, isn't it?
Oh, it's an experience. I mean, if you're not covered in Donair sauce by the end of it, you've done it wrong.
You did it. You probably pulled out a knife and fork.
That's right. I've been known to do that as well. So
I have too on occasion, because I mean, the fingers do get stuck together. It's just that ooey gooey goodness.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get extra meat, and there's just way too much meat.
They can be meaty.
They can be. Tell me, why the Book of Donaire?
Well, I have my food blog, Eat This Town, and the very first post I ever wrote was about unique foods of Newfoundland, because I had just come back on a trip to Newfoundland, and then I did unique foods of Nova Scotia, and I've always just been very interested in regional food. I think that kind of happened. I was traveling around Canada a lot at the time. I was kind of doing like little backpacking adventures. And I just realized how different all the provinces were. I thought that was really neat. And Nova Scotia especially is so culturally interesting. Like we have little pockets of communities like Acadian food in the southwest of the province and Cape Breton dishes that you don't see on the mainland. I thought that's just so interesting. I just want to chronicle that. And I can't really talk about Nova Scotian food without talking about the Donair because it's the most quintessential Nova Scotian food.
That is true. I don't know if wars have broken out over it, but I know battles have.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what are the different variations that you've seen of a Donair recipe?
Well, there's a historical trajectory. The original Donairs were smaller because everything was smaller back in the day. We've supersized everything. There was a little bit more lamb being used. So Donairs back in the day were smaller. You might see some lamb Donairs. Parsley was an ingredient, and so a lot of that isn't the case anymore. The Donair today, it tends to be bigger. The sauce, sometimes people make it with condensed milk, sometimes people make it with evaporated milk. You rarely find parsley on it. There's some shops that actually use baked pizza dough instead of a pita bread. And in Pictou County, they like to put mozzarella and pepperoni on it.
That's a Pizza Delight thing.
They do it at Pizza Delight as well. So the further away you get from Halifax, the more cheese becomes okay. And then you might see pepperoni, but lettuce even, that's extremely controversial, but they often do it in New Brunswick. So.
Wow. So then you're going from a Donair to a gyro.
Well, a gyro doesn't have lettuce on it either.
Really?
I would say the biggest difference between a Donair and a gyro is the pita bread. The gyro uses Greek pita. The Halifax Donair uses Lebanese pita. And of course the tzatziki sauce.
Correct.
And it just looks different. It feels different. It's not, you don't have that sloppiness.
and that's the magic of the Donair, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when you get that tinfoil and you unwrap it like an ice cream cone and you work your way down. And at the beginning, you've got all the flavors and stuff. But boy, when you get at the end, you've got that pita bread that's almost dissolved into the sauce.
Yeah.
And starts to run down your fingers. And yeah, I remember those.
It gets pretty
days.
soggy.
They can, but they're so good.
Yeah.
What other variations have you? So I know that the Donair is making its way west, and there are some places in, I think Edmonton's have somebody said they had it's called the Halifax Donair shop. Have you heard of anybody trying to duplicate what we have here?
So the Donair made its way west in the early 80s. So it's been there for a very long time. It was, in fact, a gentleman by the name of Charles Smart. That's not his real name, but his Donair shop was called Charles Smart. He used to work at Ravenna Pizza in downtown Dartmouth, and he's actually the one that introduced the Donair to Edmonton. That was like 1982, 1983.
Right.
So they've had it for a really long time, but it kind of evolved on its own trajectory to be a little bit different than our Donairs here. But now I would say there's some people opening up Halifax-style Donair shops. The one you're thinking of is probably Blowers in Grafton.
It's got to be the Nova Scotia salt air, right? Makes that Donair just perfect.
It could be the salt air. My theory on it is that the Donairs in Halifax were, originally created by Greeks, but the Lebanese kind of took over the industry in the late 70s, and they're the ones that brought it to Alberta. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of interpreted as almost like a shawarma.
Right.
Yeah. So
I noticed that on your blog, you've got some of the history of the Donair, and you've got a very nice old picture of the first shawarma, was it? From 1855?
The very first Donair kebab.
Kebab,
from the 1800s.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So that's what they're called, is it? That great big round, beautiful piece of meat that's spinning on a spit and cooking. That's a kebab?
The technical name for that is a Donair kebab. So kebab just means grilled meat. So there's all kinds of different kebabs, like shish kebab. Mm-hmm. Shish means sword or skewer. So that's the one with the big giant toothpick going through it.
Yep.
Donair means to turn or to rotate. So when you have a Donair kebab, what that means is that the big spinning lump of meat. And in Lebanese, they call it shawarma. It's just a translation of to turn. Shawarma means to turn. Gyro or gyro in Greek, that's just to turn. So it's all the same thing.
And I find it blasphemous that they use the electric shavers now on them.
Yeah,
That's,
that was invented in Germany.
yeah, really.
The Germans and their technology, right? And
Yeah,
actually, Germany eats more doner kebab than any other country in the world. So it only makes sense that they would have invented the most efficient way to serve it to people.
that's true. The more you get out the door.
Yeah.
So, the Book of Donaire, I take it a lot of research went into this.
Oh, yeah, you could say that.
How about eating donaires while you were making it?
So a lot of my donair research, like I don't know, I've been working on this off and on for about 5 years. Like I took a trip to Toronto, a trip to Edmonton, and a trip to Calgary specifically just to eat donairs in those places. I mean, I think in the 5 years making the book, I counted somewhere upwards of 50 donairs consumed, which is a
Nice.
lot for me because I'm, as I said, not a huge donair eater. But there were a lot of donairs eaten, a lot of interviews in the age of COVID was very interesting, so that made things more complicated.
And you mentioned COVID. Yeah, there is of course, the sourdough bread phenomenon that happened.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people are making donaires. My video on donaires actually has exploded during the COVID time.
Is that a how-to video?
Yep, how to make the meat, and it's very traditional with the ground beef.
In my book, I have a recipe for a donair clubhouse sandwich and a donair lasagna if anybody's looking on expanding their repertoire.
Wow, I make a donaire pizza. I haven't had a club sandwich donaire. I'm gonna have to try that.
Pretty tasty. Oh, and there's a recipe for donair soup. That's an interesting one.
Donaire soup. Okay, soup weather is coming. I'm gonna have to try that. Where can we get your book?
My book, you can get it at all the major bookstores, Indigo Chapters, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you Google Book of Donaire or Lindsay Wickstrom, there'll probably be a picture of a donaire and a picture of me next to each other, and you can go from
That if you're gonna do a book on donaire, you have to be next to the book.
yeah.
So what's your next big project, Lindsay?
All I can really say is that I'm going to be delving more into other Nova Scotian foods. I'm a big fan of pizza, and I know that Nova Scotians love their pizza, especially Pictou County and Cape Breton. So these are all kinds of things that I want to get some research into, is just unique foods in Nova Scotia.
I did Rapi pie, which is it's a learned appreciation of it.
Yeah, that's an acquired taste.
It
The
is.
texture, really.
Yeah, but once you get it and get the right amount of butter and the whole thing,
Do you put molasses on it?
no.
No, okay. Some people do.
I have friends on the South Shore that would slap me against the wall if I did that.
Really?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
I guess everybody's different.
Yeah, it's traditional. You have to have the pork fat, the chicken.
Yeah.
My grandmother used to use rabbit, but it's chicken stock and potatoes.
That's funny. I know a girl from Pubnico, and her dad makes it out of porcupine.
Porcupine.
Yeah.
It comes with your own toothpicks.
There you go.
Perfect. I appreciate your time, Lindsay. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Lindsay Wickstrom, food blogger, eatthistown.ca, and author of Book of Donaire. If you enjoy this podcast, let me know. Drop me a note or comment. Links are in the description. Chef Mike Moses' podcast is produced and recorded in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.